Welcome to the TIMFD podcast. Today is my favorite day is about appreciating every day as it comes, no matter what life throws at us. We hope that this podcast speaks to you, and if it does, please like, share, and comment. Now let's find out why today is our favorite day this week.
Welcome to the TIMFD podcast. Today is my favorite day. I'm Dave, this is Sam. And Sam, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we have an interesting question today.
Oh yeah,
David.
What's the question?
The question is, who's in charge of our kids?
That is actually a really good question. Now, why would you bring that up? Because you brought this to me.
I did.
And I thought it was interesting when you were bringing all this up. I'm messing around with my phone. I shouldn't be going.
I did because of two different segments between our president, Joe Biden, and our vice president, Kamala Harris.
Okay.
And I don't agree with either one of them on most issues, right?
Yeah, both of us don't, but we pray for them.
We do. We pray
every day.
Every day, yeah. But their point was it takes a community, and they're saying all of the children are our children.
Okay, so the government is saying...
The government is saying these are all our... No, they're not.
Well, and the idea behind that is, and I think we need to get philosophical here just for a moment.
A little bit.
So there's a lot of things we're going to talk about. We would call those the leaves on the tree. Mm-hmm. And the main thing is the root in the ground. And what we're talking about first is really the roots, right?
Yes.
So what we're talking about is what is foundational for that question. Who's in charge of our kids? Is it God Almighty, which would be the root, who then gives us authority as parents and given the privilege of mentoring, building, and raising them?
Yep.
Or is it the government that is now our God and is in charge of our kids, and they give us the opportunity to pay for their bills, give them taxes, and when the government wants to do something with our kids, we have no say in it.
No say in it.
So,
yes.
And even though they say we want to work together, let's say we have less say in it, so we don't have somebody say, we don't do that, so less say in it. So we're talking about root that will then get to the leaves, and we need to focus on that. Who's in charge ultimately? In our worldview.
In our world, yes.
In our worldview, it's God himself.
Is in charge.
Right.
And when you have that type of village or that type of community with God in control, then it's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But you can look around the world, and my wife grew up in Ukraine.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, because so she grew up in Ukraine and under the Soviet Union. This is before the wall came down.
Yep.
So we want you guys to get that down. So it's a really interesting story. And I think parents need to really listen to this story.
Yes.
And I think that soccer moms, all the moms there, you need to listen to this story, and because this is what we're going towards if we don't watch it. So could you explain this story real quick?
Yes. Now, my wife growing up in Ukraine, Soviet era, they had one church. It was the Orthodox Church. But now there are rumors. I can't prove any of the fact that the priests were all KGB, but that's the big rumor.
Well, that was the rumor, is that the leaders of those churches were government ordained, basically, and they're there for that reason.
Right. And so one Easter Sunday, my wife and her schoolmates decided they were going to go to Easter service at church.
Okay. Which
was basically forbidden. There's no Bibles. There's no any of that stuff. When Rita was growing up, we have no idea what
the church itself.
The regular people didn't have them. They had them in the church.
The church had
but there wasn't anything for the common everyday person.
Okay,
and so they got together.
They're about to go.
They're all ready to go into church, walk into church.
How old were they, by the way? Do you know how old she was?
I want to say it was between elementary school and middle school. That kind of age range.
5th, 6th, 7th, somewhere around
being
there.
a little rebellious, getting to that teenage,
we're going to go and do something different.
Right. And so they got to the church, and several of the girls, and Rita's a very intelligent lady, and she made the decision, I'm not going to go in. I don't have a good feeling about this.
Okay.
And so several of them didn't. Well, it's interesting, the result of that. All of the children who went into
the church that day.
Into the church for the service to prove their religion, to prove, right? They all pretty much have factory jobs, working on farms, stuff like that. The ones who didn't, they all went to university.
Okay.
So government control, government overreach, in my opinion, but also a government that had no God.
Right. So they're the God.
Yeah.
So government becomes God, and that's human beings.
Yep.
And human beings can be sinful, obviously. We're all sinful people, and prideful. and we can get big egos, and that's what you see with tyrants. And you see that in tyrants. You see that in tyrants in business.
Yes.
You see that in a boss. You see that in a principal at a school. You see that in pastors. So because we're human beings, right?
Right.
And so the issue here is, again, back to the root. The root is God or government. Who's in charge? Who's in charge of our kids?
Right.
Who's in charge of us? God or government. And you've been noticing some overreach going on. Well, we all have, probably in the last 20 years, but especially lately, in the last couple of years here, since this president became president. We saw it with President Obama, a lot of overreach taking place there.
Right.
And it's just now come around to even more of it. So what are you seeing that's a problem within the overreach of the government when it comes to our kids?
So if you pay attention to what's going on in the schools, we've heard stories. I've seen news stories and clips of parents being threatened with legal action when they go in and speak up and say, I want to have some say in the curriculum that my children are learning
Merrick
from.
Garland actually wrote a document for that and was going after soccer moms, basically.
Basically. Don't mess with soccer moms.
Not wrong. No, I mean, not right. It's just horrible.
Yeah. And so the government wants to control everything, the curriculum, everything that the kids are taught in school. And there's no God in it anymore. They have effectively taken God out of the public schools.
Oh yeah,
completely. And that started a long time ago.
The God is the government.
Is the government? Yeah.
It's the principals, the teachers, in authority over the kids, and sometimes feel like they have authority over the parents.
Yes, and that actually was, and I can't remember where it was. I have to look up the article. But the school board told the parents, "We have more right. The teachers have more rights over your children than you do because we have them for 8 hours a day."
Yeah.
Here's the thing. We know that they don't have them for 8 hours a day. If you have 8 periods, you have 8 different teachers.
Yeah. Unless you're in
elementary school.
And that's the scary thing.
That's yes. And the curriculum when they're young, this is why in Florida, Governor DeSantis and the Florida legislature, not just the governor, put some stipulations on what could be taught as far as gender and sex education, stuff like that, in the younger kids. Rightfully so. Yeah. And so, but there's people.
It was protecting them. Well, protecting kids, but protecting the parents.
Yes.
Because a lot of them were fighting against this, and they felt like they had no rights.
Yes, and parents should have rights, and they should
have rights. They have godly rights. Right. They have the rights.
They should always know what's being taught.
Yes,
they should always know what's being taught. Yes. That is one thing I think that COVID did do for us. It did put cameras in the classroom.
It did.
Okay. And I think they should remain. If a teacher doesn't want to be critiqued by the parents, then I'm not saying on her teaching techniques or anything like that, but the curriculum.
Oh, I would love that.
Then I would say maybe we need to look at that teacher. Yeah. However, they're so protected, you're not going to be able to do anything anyway.
And that's where we get to the NEA.
Yes.
Okay. So the NEA, that's the teachers union. And usually the unions were set up in such a way to help the people who join the union to get better wages, better opportunities, right? And be able to have maybe health insurance, that kind of stuff. Fighting for those things, right?
Workers' rights.
Yeah, workers' rights. The NEA, though, in this last 20 years, but let's just go to some of the articles that just came out this last year, is basically anti-gun, so anti-Second Amendment. They are pro LGBTQTYZ2X, whatever. I'm being sarcastic there because it's starting to get out of control. Drag queens, they want them in schools. And this is what they're fighting for, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Curriculum that is, what is it called? Common Core curriculum, and really to push the Black Lives Matter movement into the schools.
Critical race theory.
Horrible. And so this kind of stuff is going in anti-God.
Yes.
And anti-Christian. So our worldview is totally different from the worldview that they're trying to push. The NEA is trying to push. And I know a lot of teachers that really struggle with this because they're Christians and they're going, how do I even support this? But if I don't, I could get easily fired.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I remember when I was teaching, and I taught at Christian schools and public schools. And when I was at the public schools, they said, you need to join the union. And I said, what's the union stand for, right? What do they do? Because I started noticing in the 1980s and then the 1990s and then the 2000s, there was stuff going on with the NEA that it was like, is this really what they're standing for? It was pro-abortion. I mean, right. it was crazy. And I went, wait a second, aren't you guys supposed to be fighting for us and getting our rights? But what I see is a big political movement that you guys are fighting against me, and I'm paying money for that. I'm not going to do that. So I didn't join the union. And they said that I was going to be susceptible to firings if they didn't like certain things. Right. I happened to bring a Bible to school, and I was reading it in my time that I had, and I was doing my time of reading when I had that break. And I actually had an administrator come up to me in 2000. When was that? No, 1997. 1998. I can't remember. Yeah, 1997, 98. And said, you really can't bring a Bible here. And I said, whoa, hold on. You're saying I can't bring a Bible, my own Bible in my own time, and I can't have it on campus. And he could tell that was going to be a bad move on his part for saying that. And I said, I think that you want to rethink that. And then he sat there and, well, it sounds like you kind of know a little bit about this. And I said, well, I'm starting a church for one, as I'm teaching here. Yes, I do have a background in this area, and I know that I have the right to have this here. Yeah. And so let's not go down that road.
Right.
Yeah. And he didn't. He didn't. He was smart enough to not go down that road. But the NEA, this is really hard for teachers that are Christ-following people to want to even get behind this. Yeah. And matter of fact, people who are Christians have a tendency to back off on their Christianity because it's their job on the line. Sound a little bit familiar to what you saw at a different time in a different part of the world.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Government overreach.
Government is controlling the workers. Government tells the workers what to believe and what to do. And then the workers follow because they don't want to lose their jobs.
Yeah. And we're going down that path. It's
the complete opposite of what the unions are supposed to be about.
Yeah, the unions were designed to protect the workers.
From the big guys.
From the big guys, and they were not a political...
I'm talking. Jimmy Hoffa was a pretty big political
Jimmy Hoffa
guy.
Was, but
those unions were political pretty early on, and the reason for it is because they wanted to get government to push certain things for them, but now it's gotten out of hand. Yeah, they want their rights, they want to have protection, they want to be paid well, they want that stuff. But then it started being an overreach because then government started realizing, if we get connected with them, then we can push our agenda with them because we're going to give them money. We're going to have money connected to them.
And that's what happens to a lot of the unions. But if you look online today and look at our educators, the NEA, and what they're pushing and what they're lobbying for and how much money they're spending on political contributions.
Oh, it's horrible. Insane. It's all, and honestly, it's all on the left. And we're going to say, I'm not going to say liberals because that's not what we're talking about here. Because I'm liberal in certain things in how to live. But we're talking about leftists.
Yeah.
We're talking about people way to the left that would be back to where your wife was.
Yes.
And wanting that kind of control, which then dictates what's going to happen within society. And that's where we get to the leaves.
Yes.
And the leaves that we're talking about is the transgender movement that's going on within sports in our culture, where you have coaches that are transgender that go into a women's place. And by the way, if you notice, the transgender sport is all men going to become women.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, the reason for it is because they can win.
Yes.
And so we just saw a weightlifting contest, women's weightlifting contest won by a man. We've seen one of the top women swimmers who's a man.
Yep.
We're now they're getting into the cycling world, and women are starting to fight that. They're wanting to bring it into the tennis world. Martina Navratilova, who happens to be a homosexual woman, says, don't do this. Yeah. Because if you do this, women's sports is gone. There's no need for it.
No need for it.
If we start blending this, there's no need for it. I'm going to tell you right now, when I was in college, and I was a Division II, decent but not great athlete, and in that time frame, I could beat every woman in pretty much every race that was 200 and below, and in the long jump and triple jump with ease.
Yeah.
So this is stupid what we're doing in sports. So if you're a soccer mom, if you're a mom or a dad who has girls, you've got to watch this. Do not let the government start making decisions for you and your daughter. Second thing is that when we're talking about what's happening with the readings that are going on campus, can you kind of address that real fast?
Yeah. So will take and read transgender ideals, gay, homosexual ideals, the drag shows.
The drag queen readings.
Drag queen readings.
Which is being shut down in some states right now.
And
it needs to be shut down in every state.
Everywhere. But they'll go in and they'll read that to kindergartners, first graders, second, third graders. So very, very impressionable minds. So what's the political and societal
let's go back to the Marxist point of view.
Right.
So let's go back to where your wife was at. So tell us what that looks like. What do you see and what your wife sees going on here?
So it's a complete takeover of the next generation. And what will happen if we don't talk about it anymore, but China, you're only allowed to have so many children. I think it's one. Okay?
I know.
And so we're getting into a place for total government overreach into our families. And you know how you raise your children. I know how I raise my children. And if we don't stand up as Christians, and if the parents don't stand up for their kids in the schools, we're going to be in that same situation where if a child decides he wants to come to my student ministry class and there's somebody outside taking down license plate numbers and everything else
at the church,
and saying, well, this family went and this family went and this family, and they lose their opportunity. Maybe they lose a scholarship. Maybe they lose the right to play football or taekwondo or lose a job. Yes. And so.
And that can't happen, guys. We cannot let that happen.
We have got to stop that.
So that's what we're talking about, the root.
The root.
Talking about the root, because there's tons of scriptures about parents, who are to be the people who are taking this on. You have some of them, so you could read some of them.
So, Proverbs 22:6 is probably the most popular when it comes to training children, is train up a child in the way he should go, and he will not depart from it when he's older. And not saying that some people like me don't stray. When I grew up and stuff like that. And so we all have those kind of, gives you the opportunity to come back to Christ. And in our view, we have a choice we've made. We've chosen. Boy, that was
chosen. That's an interesting
chosen. Good word, right? We've chosen to follow Christ. We've accepted Christ, and we choose to walk in that light. Mm-hmm. And you have that choice also. You can accept or not. I prefer to have my consequences in heaven than the other place, right? Titus 2:3-5. You should go and read these. It tells us that the older women should teach the younger women. There's your sense of community. That's where experience.
So that's what we're talking about, the Christian community within the church and all that stuff.
You take some of the. Does Tanya listen to this? Some of the older women. Yeah. So some of the. I'm going to rephrase that. More mature women.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You take your wife and Kim and some that we have around. Stacy Landers, I think of, and they're there to teach younger women.
Sure.
The people.
Well, that's
who
what we have MOPS. We have MOPS that is mothers of preschoolers, kids, and they actually Alexis brings different ladies in and different couples in to talk to these younger wives about child rearing, the struggles of it. How do you do this as a Christian? So they do all that stuff.
Yes.
But Scripture is real clear on what we as parents are supposed to do. The Shema is a perfect example of that. We're supposed to train our children.
Yes.
We're supposed to be, wherever we're at, if we're lying down or we're waking up,
yes,
we're supposed to be talking about who Jesus is. The government is not supposed to be telling your child there is no God.
Right.
Don't believe this stuff. The Bible is archaic and you don't need to believe this stuff at all. Matter of fact, why don't we just kind of get our sexual preferences on right now? You're a 4-year-old kid. You know what? You're a boy, but we're going to say you're a girl. Or, don't you feel like you're a girl? And that could be pushed that direction. That's why you're starting to see now legislation being popped up on even the surgeries taking place.
Yes.
And giving the hormones, saying we got to stop this.
Right.
This is out of control. But that's the leaves. See, that's the leaves on the tree.
Yeah.
That shows the production of a root that's bad.
Yes.
And what's happening is this is popping up, and we're arguing over the leaf, where we really need to be arguing over the tree, over the root, and what's the root going on, and what's the root doing.
Well, and
the root is the government, and the government's too big, and the government should not be in doing anything to be able to have any kind of say over our children at all. They need to be a support to us. The church is a support to parents.
Yes.
The church does not oversee the kids. That's not our job. Matter of fact, that the parents are the number one thing. The family is the key to everything. And when the family is together, then the church is stronger, the society is stronger, everything's stronger. Our school districts will be stronger.
Yes.
But what government's trying to do is split that and say, you know what, we know better. You don't really need that nuclear family, husband and wife, you don't really need that. And there's a reason for it. But going back to Marxism and the Marxist point of view, it's destructive to the family.
Yes.
Wants the family to be cut off. The next thing is cut the church off real quick. Got to. Because if you don't get rid of the church is just going to be a pain to Marxism because it's all about freedom. Yep. Unless the church gets infiltrated by the government and the government's dictating the church, which you saw, she saw. Then it's an underground church that has to happen like what's happening in China.
Yeah, and the thing with that, when the government overreach comes in like that, they'll shut down churches like ours.
Oh yeah,
they'll be a church.
Well, that's what's going on. That's what's going on when we did when COVID took place.
Right.
When COVID took place, you had liquor stores that were still open. They considered that essential and told churches that you have to shut down. Yeah. And we were one of those churches that went, no. And after a month, when we saw what was going on, we went, no, we got a COVID team together, made our protocols, got ready, and started up, and we never had a problem. Yep. But we started, and we had people saying we're going to kill people, all that kind of stuff. Didn't have one issue whatsoever. No. Government overreach was a big problem there. And I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, because I think it's kind of dumb to look at under everything as a conspiracy. But bottom line is, you got to look at what's going on. Right. Biblical, God's in charge. Government's not. Government should not be dictating to us what we should be doing. Right. There are laws that are, by the way, given by God. Yes. That are protected. Matter of fact, I had one lawyer say, man, if I just studied the Bible beforehand, I could have learned a lot more before I went into law school. Because a lot of what is in law school, the Judeo-Christian point of view, is in our laws, except now we're starting to pervert the laws all over the place. And she would say now, it's been going on for a while. Right. And that is the secular, humanist, nihilist point of view. Yep. So we're going to be diametrically opposed. And there again, that whole area is government overreach also. Yes. We want to remind you, we're talking about some of the things that we see out there. Don't be focused on the leaves. No. It's like David was talking about. All these they're smoke screens, guys and ladies. They're smoke screens. We have to be focused on the root, which is we need to have a foundation in Christ. We need to have a foundation where God is in control. And government is not. Government is under God, not above and moving God out of the way. Government is under God, and government is used to help the people, not dictate to the people. Over the people, because God's in charge. So if we can keep that, I just want us to start thinking about that. I think both of us do. To keep us our perspective on the root when we see these things like, they're trying to take our Second Amendment rights away. They're trying to push a homosexual movement within the schools, or they're trying to say that I don't have control of my kids. Stop that. Just go. I get it. We're gonna go against that. But right here is the problem: government overreach. God's in charge, not government. And the minute we let that happen, then the church has not done its job. Yep. The church hasn't, because what we've done is not shown who's in charge. Yes. Right. And who's in charge is God. Yes. God's in charge of us, our children, the whole kit and caboodle. God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. He is in charge. That's it. And with that in mind, that means the church is not the dictator to you either. No. That's the whole thing here, is that sometimes the church gets powerful too, does the same thing. That's not what we need to do here. Right. The church is there to be a support to your family, to raise your family up, to say, parents, you're the authority. God has given that to you. Raise them well. We'll try to show you how to do that as far as best we can, biblically. Yep. But God's in charge of this thing, and we believe that. And so God says the parents are in charge of this. Parents are in charge, and we're not going to be dictating that. And government needs to get that. So we need to start looking at people that we vote into these government situations, so we can have people who have a perspective that government is not the one that's in charge. God's in charge. God's in charge. Well, this has been David Towner, Sam McKeown. Today is our favorite day. Today is my favorite day is the title of the book that David has written. I would strongly encourage you to go and buy the book. If you don't know how to get a hold of it, reach one of us. I think it's on Amazon. Just go to davidtowner.com. I didn't put it on Amazon because Amazon is they're not are not in line with us. Yes. So davidtowner.com. There's a link
in the show notes.
Yep.
So, David, once again, today's my favorite day. Thank you, my friend.
You.
We'll talk to you later.
All right, man.
You guys
take it easy.
Be blessed.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to TIMFD, Today is My Favorite Day. Views, comments, and opinions are those of the host and guest alone, and Dave and Sam are solely responsible for the content of this podcast. TIMFD is produced and directed by Alex Korn. Music is composed and performed by Chuck Fott. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, live intentionally, and be very blessed.